Hi everyone, welcome back to the garden on what is a bracing, bitterly cold January day. The sky might be blue, but let me tell you, when that northerly wind kicks in, I filmed this video right at the start of the cold spell, it's something else. The trees, the cordylines there, being buffeted in the opposite direction to what they would be usually. But that aside, I'm barely feeling the cold today because today is an exciting day. This video is a very exciting video because we're finally joining our existing tropical, jungle and exotic themed garden into this brand new space. Yes, recently, a couple of videos ago, I put out a video talking through my design for this area here, asking for input, feedback, suggestions. Well, I've incorporated a couple of those ideas, and there was something I didn't mention on that plan, something I was mulling over, but today we're gonna get right into it, and it involves taking this fence down here. So let me talk no more, and let's get into the real exciting stuff as we join this garden into this one. In today's video then, we're gonna have some practical gardening action. I'm gonna be talking through some of my design changes, little tweaks, and also I'll be talking about some of the practicalities and jobs I've got lined up for January. But before that, let's just head inside where it's not quite as windy. You'll see the polytunnels become a temporary home for a lot of my potted exotics. Those very much left outside, hoping that we get this land purchase through because I didn't have a polytunnel greenhouse of my own. And luckily, it's all kind of come together just in time for the cold spell. I'll probably be fleecing those a little bit more over the next few nights. But already you can see, if I try to dial the camera back, even in December, we had minus 4.6. So this next week or so, last week as you're watching the video, I'm pretty sure we'll be seeing colder temperatures than that. Chilly stuff indeed. But anyway, it's time to go back to dreamland and talk about my plans for the garden. Yes, in my recent video, I talked through this design here. Professional as ever, you can see, laid it out again on this raised bed. But one thing I was very pleased about, when I put this design up, there was a lot of helpful ideas and feedback. Thank you so much for those. I obviously put the design out, wanting some feedback, so it was great to get it. Don't worry, you won't hurt my feelings, but I am generally pleased that actually I don't think I heard anything against the actual design itself. So we like the circles, that's good. Some ideas came about pushing the circles out around a little bit more, maybe pushing this one that way, changing the size of the circles. I did quite like the idea about having maybe a smaller circle this end, then a medium-sized one, and then a large one. So the garden is very much a sort of visual journey, but at the end of the day, one of the whole purposes of this garden is to have actual areas of lawn for the family and the dogs to enjoy. So I don't want to trim it down too much, but maybe a little bit more of that one, we'll see. But when it comes to the really important things, there was a couple of comments that seemed to get most of the attention, and those really were about the paths through the garden and access. Now, when I talk through this design, and I'll try to make this brief because there's nothing more exciting than looking at a piece of paper in a polytunnel, is there? I talked about this section here, how I was undecided whether I was going to have one single route through the garden or multiple ones. Well, today as that paper's jumping around the place, I can tell you I've actually decided that I'm very roughly going to have, we'll say, you can't even see this here, can you? Professional as always. Basically, two paths, roughly leading round the sides there. That then opens up the opportunity of a central bed here for that visual blocking. So yes, when you go to either path, you will see pretty much the view beyond. I don't really think there's any escaping that without needlessly splitting the garden into tiny little garden rooms. But you've definitely got more intrigue, more mystery when you come into the garden. It gives me the chance to have a nice central tree there, a beautiful bed, maybe some taller grasses, something like that to visually divide the garden a little bit. And then obviously having multiple paths, it's great for when you're visiting the garden because you can actually have two different routes around it. It's also great for our daughter, soon to be daughters, and also the dogs as well. Plenty more routes for them to run around and cause havoc in the garden. So there will definitely be one path going around there and another there, and I'll be taking that central path out. There were plenty of other great ideas, some of which will come into play, but very, very quickly, the one I wanted to talk about most was the access into the garden. Now, when I put this out and said that the main access, which I will show you around in a little bit, is through that gate there, a lot of you didn't really like it because it meant walking past this polytunnel, walking around it. I know they're not the most aesthetically pleasing of things, but this area, I know a lot of you sort of consider a utility area, a place for growing plants, potty things on, that kind of thing, which it is to a certain extent. The fire pit on this side here A lot of you thought that was a natural route into this new garden here. But unfortunately, when I actually built this and planted the trees, this land here was never even a possibility. So I didn't really plan it with that in mind. That said though, I did leave a tiny little route up through it, an adventurous route, and that's what we'll talk about today. Walking up to the last quarter of our current garden then, you'll just have to forgive all the general construction mess, weeds and everything. The garden is quite clearly as messy as it's ever been. But let's face it, if you can't talk about that at the start of a new project, a new transformation, if you can't have big dreams in January, then when can you have them? And this dream will definitely come together eventually. So, as you walk down to the garden, you definitely come to a bit of a crossroads. A crossroads practically, and a crossroads in terms of my garden design plans. Yes, the main entrance I talked about in that last video was to go round here. You'd have to go through this door here. That bed will be kicked back a little bit. This path will be nice and wide. It'll come up to that surface there. You'll come through here. There'll be a new fence going across there. Nice bit of hard standing. You'd walk around here and then come up to here. So that's all good and everything. The garden will open up nicely in front of you. A beautiful design, but definitely, as a lot of you pointed out, a bit separate to our current garden. Yes, I put up my garden design video wanting your feedback, and I'm so pleased so many of you gave it. I'm not, to use a term I only learned of recently, an asshole, someone who asks for advice and then refuses to actually incorporate any of it. But neither am I someone willing to compromise my own design's dreams just because a lot of other people want it a different way. So the solution is very much based on a couple of little changes, but also a couple of things that I didn't tell you about. It's about projects well into the future, but also ones which have yet to be completed. So let me explain a little bit more. So your main problem then, well, maybe not specifically you, but probably it was you, was about walking past the polytunnel behind me. Yes, polytunnels, they are very much a practical construct for growing plants in a slightly warmer, sheltered location in the surrounding ground. But they're not the most aesthetically pleasing, cosmetically beautiful constructions, are they? Very practical and very much something built with only purpose in mind. So yes, I do get that a lot of you, if it was your garden, you wouldn't choose to walk past a polytunnel. And a couple of you did actually suggest moving it right up the far in the garden amongst the trees, which, to be completely honest with you, I did disagree with that. I will make that stand. Firstly, the far in the garden, that's going to be wild, it's going to be natural. I don't want a polytunnel up there. That will bring all the trees further this way, and that's not what I want from that part of the garden. But secondly, for me, a polytunnel, a growing space, really is the centre of the garden. Obviously, symbolically it is. A lot of new plants will be propagated, grown in here, and a lot of fantastic family times will hopefully be enjoyed, growing various flowers, fruits and vegetables. But for me, a garden like this really needs to have a polytunnel greenhouse right at its centre, almost like a botanic garden. But what I will admit is that this isn't always going to be here. Now, the other main practical obstacle was basically that this polytunnel is built very, very well. Everything's been put down properly. The posts into the ground, it really has been done as well as something like this can be done. You've even got a concrete path specifically made to run right down the middle. Although I could move it, I'm sure I absolutely could. These things don't tend to move especially well, but I know I could do it. It would take a lot of work. And like I said, I don't really want it down the far in the garden. I see this polytunnel here hopefully lasting maybe 5 to 10 years. I reckon there's a good few years left in this current cover, and then I would like to recover it again and hopefully get another 5 years or so out of the frame. So we're talking 5 to 10 years, I've got possibly the best growing space I could have ever imagined just a few years ago, and I'm not about to move that just to make the garden design sit a little bit better. Now that might sound like a compromise, but it really isn't. So let me tell you about my actual plans for this space. Going back into our existing garden then, I keep calling it that, you will see that most of the design is pretty straight. Yes, in summer there's a lot more curves around the gunnera, the bamboo, and a lot of the summer tropical plants, but at this time of the year I did want a pretty straight avenue through this, what I call bamboo tunnel. Then, as you turn around, keep going through the garden, you are confronted with this island in the middle. Now, I did actually find it quite amusing. Well, it's not really that funny. But throughout so many of my garden design and build projects through this summer, a lot of you said the garden was too straight. I needed to mix it up. And now there is the potential to actually go off in a different direction. A lot of you preferred the straight route through there. But what might be a bit of a game changer, and something in fairness I didn't actually say, is that my plans, and I don't really like to mention things too far into the future because I know what you lot are like at holding me to deadlines, but I know what's the deadline. But my actual plan in the future would be to not have this polytunnel here, but instead have a proper professional, well, as professional as I can make it myself, greenhouse closer to this hedge there. So what that would give, well, it would give two main things. Firstly, you've got a more aesthetic growing space over there. A greenhouse can look beautiful. There can be an object of great beauty and also great practical purpose as well, unlike a polytunnel. So I think there will be the perfect spot for my greenhouse. I did have designs to have one further up near the house where I've currently got a large pile of soil, but that might be where a playhouse is going. I'll show you that very shortly. I thought I'd quickly film another section on my phone, add it in for some context. So this is the part of the garden closest to the house. Over there, you can see my spring 2025 raised bed project, built, planted with those beautiful palms last year. Here you can see a selection of the child accessories that you no doubt need, all the kinds of different slides and a lot of things that definitely I don't enjoy playing on myself. Trampoline over there, definitely haven't tried that myself either. As we head through the first of my sleeper archways, you'll see the messiest part of the garden. This is going to be tidied up, and this is the pile of topsoil, subsoil I'll be using as the basis of the new gigantic grass border. Yeah, some of it's a little bit claggy, so I'll be adding a lot of organic matter. That'll be coming up in a video very, very soon. But once this is moved, well, behind it was actually where I was going to have a greenhouse. Basically, a lean-to greenhouse following the line of that brick shed further this way. And it might still happen one day down the line. It might be a garden building, a garden room of some kind, maybe a bigger shed, who knows. But for the next good few years at least, this area here will be tidied up and used for a brand new playhouse. Well, a second-hand playhouse that we got late on last summer. It needs a fair amount of repair work and is currently blocking the side of the house. So once all this soil's moved up there, I can then put the playhouse in there. It's definitely going to be a very busy year. Oh, and did I also mention that this soil here, forming the basis of the jungle clearing area, will all be dug up too, so I can continue the crusher path through the garden? There's going to be a fair amount of soil to get rid of, and it's going to be very important to do things one thing at a time. But an exciting year of garden projects. The other main reason for doing that is it opens up a path down here. Yes, this path here, if it was a couple of meters wider, which I will be taking this fence out very soon, I could really dress up the back of this border here, which currently is just basically 3x2 council slabs just put on edge. I could dress that up with some nice stones, some nice cobbles, and then just look at the view that you've got as you walk down the path. You've still got the secluded patio area down there. You've also got these amazing exotics up here with a few smaller plants tumbling down the wall. You've then got a grand entrance into the garden. So yes, I think a central path down there would be fantastic. A greenhouse kickback over here, but don't get me wrong, this isn't going to happen anytime soon. We're probably talking 10 years away. So yeah, definitely something I've got to plan ahead for. So provisionally, I had the main entrance to the garden coming out from here and then looping off. And that is still going to stay the case. I did also speak about having a few palms, little waggies or something growing at the end of here to basically provide a visual exotic link with the garden over there. And also because I like the idea of the silhouettes at the back of the polytunnel. I will still be planting those, but they will be going close to this end here, and I'll only be having grasses and other things growing here. So in the future, I can very simply cut a line through the border there. I've then got a separate border here which won't interfere with the new greenhouse, and I can very easily either have another path coming out there or fill that space in with some more plants. Believe me, that is not a problem. So that is my main plan for what I'll call the main entrance. Now, there is going to be a more adventurous entrance, and that's what I'll be talking about right in just a second. But you can actually see now, at least, I think I can make this entrance to the garden a lot more beautiful and a lot more purposeful than my previous garden design video might have implied. So yes, this polytunnel, it's only a temporary construct, but one which I'd be daft not to use to its full absolute lifetime potential. This area here could really be something beautiful. Yes, it's going to be purposeful, it's going to be utilitarian, but imagine a few potted plants, maybe a containerized water feature, some lights, whatever you want to imagine. I think walking past the growing space should be the center of the garden, and it should be a truly beautiful experience. One day at least. So yes, as soon as I get this border moved back there, and I eventually get the hard landscaping done through the garden, going through that gate there, which is swiftly shutting in front of our eyes, that will be a flat, smooth entrance to the new garden. It'll be a sinuous, continuous path leading through the space, wheelchair friendly, able to take a wheelbarrow down there. You can't have an entrance to the new garden which isn't wheelchair friendly. I obviously admit that. And you've seen some of my gardening projects. Let's face it, I need to plan ahead for being in a wheelchair. Hopefully that doesn't come back to haunt me, but you know what I'm saying. So yes, that definitely needs to be a flat, stable entrance for everyone to get into the new space, whether that's round the polytunnel for now, or potentially down a more beautiful exotic avenue in the future. But a good few of you suggested, or liked the comment, about the garden going through the fire pit. Now, there is one comment in particular that I want to mention. Unfortunately, lingering over all the weeds and unprotected exotic plants, you'll have to forgive those. But the comment came from a connoisseur of the exotic garden space, Yorkshire Chris himself. And he said, in his mind at least, the path should flow through here. Which he framed that as basically saying, if I just moved the garden, what would I do? Now, I'll be honest with you. I planted a lot of beautiful trees at the end here. And I've put a lot of effort, a lot of memories into making the fire pit so far. So yes, it might seem like a project which has been forgotten, abandoned. It definitely isn't. It's just been shifted down my priorities until I can really do it justice. But things will be happening. Everything will come together. And I will explore a few more of my other projects later in this video. But what I want to really get across is, for me, this fire pit is what's going to make this part of the garden special. You won't see this every day. You won't see such a concentration of amazing yuccas, really sculptural arid plants, true beauty. I actually think, although my garden is George's jungle garden, the jungle is always going to be the entrance into the garden. I think this area truly gives something different you just don't see at other bigger gardens. So there will always be a fire pit in my garden, you'll be pleased to hear. And one day, at least, it might even be finished. But that's where we come to the entrance here, or the exit, depending which way you're looking at it. Yes, when I was building the fire pit, I will say on one of my sort of fluid design evolutions, left a gap in the wall here. At the time, it was very much to give a bit of practical access to the back of the garden there. It was to help find a home for that olive tree up there. And I quite like the idea that I could pretend that the garden went on, which now, obviously, is a dream that's turned into a reality because the garden does go on. This is always ever going to be a small entrance. I don't want to chop much out here because I won't be able to fit the benches in. I don't want to disrupt all the tree roots and everything on that side there. So this will always be a narrow entrance. But whenever I'm showing anyone my garden, plant people, this is the way I come right to the end. And that is something which we'll be saying. Because if you head up here, you'll see a few different options. Yes. As we reach the top of the garden, I'm not going to be moving these eucalyptus. They won't move, let's face it. I'm not going to chop this beautiful one down here. This Mount Buffalo, you can probably see it right up there, flowering in the January sun. What an absolute treat. What a beautiful tree. That olive up there, those yuccas, I love the composition. But when it comes to this part of the garden here, there's options. Look down there, look, allium's already shooting away. Mad, isn't it? But when it comes to these yuccas here, these are plants which could be moved. These are plants which could find a home in my current garden, replacing some of the exotics I've lost growing around the fire pit. And this could be a very nice entrance into the garden behind. So yes, as I've teased over the last few videos, but maybe didn't make abundantly clear in my garden design plan video, there was always going to be an entrance up through the garden. I did mull over several different options, including taking this yucca out here And that may be an option. Eventually, when I have that path down there, you could have a third route just cutting through here. All these paths leading through a beautiful, dramatic grass border. I think it could be something special. I did ponder going around this way here, where I've already teased a little path type construction, but there is that conifer just the other side of the hedge there, which I didn't really want to take out, because it's a plant with a story, a tree with a tale to tell, and I like to leave it there if I possibly can. But when it comes to these yuccas here, these can be moved. That fruit tree growing up there, unfortunately, that is in the wrong place for the design. So I might have to take that one tree out. But I think really it's time to have a look at taking these panels out of the garden here and really show the potential that this will open up. I'm really excited to do this. This moment, more than any other, will really make the garden feel like mine. But first, that sun's bright, isn't it? I just need to temporarily take these birdhouses off here. I say temporarily, they're not going back there. I think they've maybe got another year or two left in them. There'll be plenty more bird boxes going in. You'll be pleased to hear as I spear myself on that rose. And there's another one up here being very much reclaimed by nature. This one possibly hasn't got as long left in it. Managed to savage myself a little bit on that rose. You can see there, both bird nests down. Both have been used in the past. Actually used within a few weeks of putting that one up on the right-hand side there. But anyway, it's now time to get the fence out. The moment you've been waiting for, when the dramatic potential pathways will reveal themselves. Let's get into it. A bit of faffing around later then, and the backside is done. I've taken all the screws out. Typically, always the way in life, if you need to take something out, you can guarantee it's been put in so incredibly well. And if you're relying on something to stay in place, like the panels behind where you are now, then yeah, there've definitely been corners cut there. But this has been put in really well. The job of taking them out made it a little bit harder by some idiot, and by some idiot I mean me, who put a sleeper followed by a load of gravel at the back of them. But I managed to get a couple of fingertips under it and pry it up. So yeah, like I mentioned a couple of times before, for gardening, strongman training really is something that'll help you out massively. But anyway, it's time to take the screws out on this front side and then pop a panel out. What a moment. The garden, two become one. Yeah, let's not make any jokes there. Let's just get into it. What will this pathway look like? What will the view behind this grass border look like? There's only one way to find out, and it's to get this panel out. And now for the moment of truth. The wind has calmed down. The world virtually silent, apart from the bird song in the distance. It's time to take the panel out. Oh yes, I've been looking forward to this. Let's give it a go. We've got various roof suckers coming from next door, but don't mind about taking some of those out. The rest of it's all nettles, which I'm very much used to from my garden. Would be a bit tight somewhere, wouldn't it? Remi, this is going to blow your mind. Not right now, because it might be a bit of a guillotine. But in just a minute, boy, you are going to have one big garden to play with. Yes, let's get that out of the way. Chuck that down here. Look at that! Look! Right, now let's take this one out to complete the vista, well, for now at least. Might have left a screw in there. Good boy, Remi. Before I take this one out, actually, I might have to get a photo of myself stood in this gateway here for the video thumbnail. Don't judge me, I mean, you clicked on the video, so it clearly worked, didn't it? Yay! Look at that, Remi! Look at that! Look at that! Should we get the last two out? Yes, we can! Yes, we can! Right. I will, of course, be saving everything I can. Unfortunately, these panels can't really replace the ones over there. I think those are probably in better nick. They just need securing better. But I will be able to use this wood somewhere. Don't you worry about that. And the sleeper I took out, that's definitely got a purpose. Right, let's look at this last one, get a job done. There we go then, a few minutes of definitely 100% carefully controlled demolition over. The post might have come out at the same time, but it needed to come out anyway. Like I said, everything will be reused, and we've now got a fully open fence. Look at that. Yes. A few of you did wonder how I was going to tie the new garden in with the existing. There's a few different ways I was wondering about doing that. Firstly, just the planting really. Have a few more palms this side, no problem at all. Maybe have another cordesline or something that looks like a cordesline, a big wide leaf grass potentially. Have that here, and then naturally you've got that flow through there with that triple. I was at one point going to take that Trachycarpus out. It's never been watered in any kind of way. But do you know what? It's quite a decent little plant. It's persisted, so it may well just live there. And who knows, it might perk up with all the sun now it's going to have. And the other way I was going to tie the garden in was with the topography. At one point, I did think about blending this mound here in with the new raised grass border. And I might do it in some kind of way, but potentially at the sides. Those yuccas, I'd love to say that I was very forward thinking, planted them in this very free draining, gravelly horticultural grit substrate, because I knew I could take them out very easily. But let's be honest, that was purely a plant decision. But having said that, it has come in very handy because I can dig those out very nicely, and that gravel and grit will go straight onto the Mediterranean border, which is near the archway I built in the summer. So everything will be reused. Do not worry about that. So we now have a vista. This will be the backdrop to the grass border. You've got the fruit trees, that young apple tree there, which I've pruned and looked after over the years. It was originally toppled over when we moved in, and it's now looking pretty fantastic. We've got the eucalyptus there, and in the middle, that olive tree. Big cordies there. I know what you're thinking. This is now an entrance. The rest of the garden has a theme of restriction, narrowing, and then opening up. And I think this exit and entrance could well be the crown and glory of that theme. Just imagine it, walking your way up that fire pit there, and then bang, this opens up. What do you think about that? In fact, don't imagine it, let's actually do it. Let's walk through this area here for the first time from the other way, and let me know your thoughts. As you know by now, I definitely incorporate your thoughts and ideas into my gardening videos. So I'm as excited and interested in your ideas as you are. So we head out the fire pit then. You push through here. Already just the amount of light flooding through. Remember that way over there, that's west. So south facing around there, you can have so much light flooding in. You push through here, although it is now getting quite dark to say that. You walk through these beautiful giant eucalyptus. They've only been in the ground 4 or 5 years. And then this presents itself. What will happen here? Yes, I know, something to ponder. For me, the natural route here is central. Maybe pushing some of those yuccas in a raised bed somewhere over there. Potentially have some really dramatic ups and downs, real topography. Let me know your thoughts. Push back through, looking at it again from this side. So yeah, I think personally, with the trees that's there, don't know what you think, Remi, you just don't care. I think that those trees frame an entrance or a view very nicely. I think personally, I'd be daft not to have a border that sort of pours around here. Remember, I've talked about the giant grasses and a few bamboo going down this side here, and then have a winding path that comes through here, joining into the new path or the very, very future path there. Beautiful grass border that you can see from every angle. And like I mentioned, seeing different borders from different angles, capturing different light is a huge part of the new garden. And that could start right here in the new entrance. Please do take the time to let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I don't mention that for algorithmic purposes. I mention it because I really value your ideas, your feedback in helping shape my garden. But anyway, this video doesn't end here. There's a few more things we need to discuss. First question, one that I probably already answered, will these panels be coming out here? And the answer is yes, they will. Again, that'll really open up this beautiful Mediterranean exotic area here. You'll have a bit more of an airy space. The polytunnel will get more light. And as I pass through here, you'll see at the minute, the back edge of this fire pit border is a complete mess. Well, let's be honest, the border itself is a mess, partly because I struggle to get to the back and actually weed it. As you can imagine, squeezing past this Stars Illyrian with those spiny leaves is definitely a challenge. But now, with this fence out of the way, I won't have that excuse anymore. I will at some point also have the use for the cobbles I've kept down there in the fire pit. Those can potentially help to dress the back edge of this border here. At the minute, like I said, a very practical edge, just slabs on edge, but I know I can make a better job of it. And that better job will really be appreciated when one day we have a new greenhouse down here. Remi, what do you think? Yes, it's time to go through some other ideas and my jobs I've got coming up. Let's go back in the polytunnel where it's a little bit warmer. Well, I say a little bit warmer. Oh, it's currently showing 5.4 degrees. Tropical temperatures. Right, let's get the tripod, Remi, and go through some more ideas. So you can now see then, to illustrate it on here, hopefully I can, I will have a potential future route for the garden of essentially down there. Straighten that. This isn't the best drawing surface. Potentially that'll open up there, so I'll keep the palms in this area here, so that way I can have what will be the path for the next, we'll say 5 to 10 years, and then also have the option of this path here. I can then take out these yuccas here, hidden there. Those can actually just go around the fire pit. I've lost a couple of, we'll say, less hardy yuccas on one of my palms up this part of the garden here, so those can nice and easily fit in. And then I'll have a route through here. I didn't put it in this plan here because it is very sort of fluid. I'm thinking something like this here. So neither route shows you the full garden. There's a bit of mystery. I've got the potential for an exciting bed here, and then also have some really tall grasses, bamboos around this area here, so you can't literally see the whole garden. And then in the future, I can maybe join them up a little bit more like that, and then have a bigger border this side here. But that's faffing around that can wait for years down the line. So we now have that there. And it also neatly, it will for the next 5 to 10 years at least, have a beautiful flowing pattern here that will nicely mirror the dual paths up there. Obviously entirely intentional and not something I've just realised looking at this design. But there are a few more areas which I wanted to discuss. One of you, not Remi, actually mentioned it'd be helpful to produce a version of this plan showing my timeline of events. And yes, that would be helpful, and I wish I had the time to do it. But very simply, I want to get the borders for this garden marked out and some of the main plants in very, very soon. I want to get on with that while I can and produce something that looks like a garden later this year. I know, big ask with a daughter on the way in the next month or so, scary stuff, but I'm sure I'll find a way of making it happen. Essentially though, the main shape of the garden will be set out. I won't be doing a lot of level changes in this garden. I don't really want raised lawns because, let's face it, climate change is a thing. We are getting dry summers, and raising up a lawn it's not the best option. And like I've also said, I want the garden to be future-proof in terms of wheelchairs, bikes, pushchairs, wheelbarrows, you name it. I want a nice flat route through the garden. But there will be some more topography changes around this pond here. That pond though, and this garden building, those are future projects. There won't be any progress in those anytime soon. I just wanted to give you a glimpse of the overall plan. Now, when it comes to the garden room itself, when I mentioned garden room / potting shed, I more meant potting shed in terms of the rustic aesthetic. You know, these beautiful Instagrammable potting sheds you see where everything's exposed timber and looks fantastic. Something kind of like that. I don't want anything too clashing and modern. So that, whilst I mentioned potting shed, there's going to be nothing botanic about its purpose. It is purely a garden family room for us all to sit out and enjoy the garden. That is what it's about. There needs to be a place for that, and that's where it's going to be. So yeah, sorry to throw you off the scent there. I'm not going to have utility areas all the way through the garden, and that'll be somewhere to actually enjoy it. And when it comes to the main look of the building, something rustic. Brendan, yes, I might actually set it back a little bit further into the trees. I don't know how obvious it was from this design, but I did plan to have a tree literally there and another tree here and another one there. So it would feel like it's in the wood, if you like. But I might just push it back a little bit more. Andrew and Anne-Marie, yes, I might just put it a bit of an angle, potentially. There's all kinds of different options, but that's one for down the line. This spring, or late winter at least, I want to get the trees in at that end there. When it comes to the cabin, there may be potential for a bit of shoushujiban, or however you pronounce it, essentially burning the timber or maybe even painting it very dark. I do like recessive dark black timber. It just fits in so well with brightly coloured plants, and there will be a lot of brightly coloured plants. But one of the ideas which seemed quite popular in the comments was potentially having a Japanese style area here. I mean, I'll be honest with you, there's going to be some Japanese trees going into it. There's going to be some bamboo, there's water, there's a bridge. All the elements are there, but to be completely honest, at the minute at least, it doesn't really vibe with me. Yes, a lot of my existing gardens got strong themes, but they're mostly done with the planting. I'm not really one for, we'll say, strong hard landscaping or accessories. It's fine if you like that kind of thing. And Mark's garden looks fantastic with some really strong visual elements. But for me at least, I like my themes to be more subtle, suggested. I want a blend of natural planting featuring trees from all around the world. I find that more exciting. But I completely get why a Japanese garden or a food forest might be an incredible use of this space, and there might be elements of both going in, just potentially not visually very strong. But I can always, you know, down the line, add some elements. I'm not ruling anything out, and we'll see. Like I've always mentioned, a garden is a journey, and it's all about the journey, isn't it? So who knows what might pop up down the line. But there's a few more little practical jobs at this end I want to go through now. Right, so let's just have a little walk with Remi down the garden, have a chat about some of the things I spoke about in that design and potential practical jobs I've got coming up in the very, very near future. So when I spoke about the planting for this space, in my design video, I probably overstressed the differences to our current garden. I spoke about different influences like Dan Pearson, Peter Udolf. Yes, I definitely want a more flowing, naturalistic, pan-global-esque look to the garden. I want the exotics, but I also want the perennials, the grasses. I want a garden which visually is striking, beautiful, exciting. Not too much to ask, is it? But I also want a garden that blends in nicely with the countryside behind. I want something that features trees which echo the trees in the distance. There's plenty of beauties up there to choose from. And I also want something which has grasses to mirror the grasses beyond. I mean, don't get me wrong, I don't think I'll be planting any pampas grass, as, you know, impressive as they are. I might be a jungle VIP in my own garden, but I'm definitely not king of the swingers. Sorry, Peter, I know you just like the grass. Actually, to be fair with that grass, there is a funny story Peter told me last week, which is that it was supposed to be a mini pampas grass. Planted it, left it for a couple of years in the front garden, and it was very obvious that it wasn't a miniature, so it's gone out the back, where it's now about 3.5 meters tall. Anyway, back to the design. Yes, planting, I do want a flowing mixture of plants, but this garden is still undeniably going to be George's jungle garden. There'll be a lot of palms, there'll be a lot of bamboos, there'll be a lot of tall plants this end surrounding the space. But in the middle, I do want that flowing summery mixture of plants. I want that softness. I want the perennials there. There will, of course, be some more edible plants going in, but I don't really want to lean fully into the whole food forest theme. And yes, I did mention Chatsworth, but that's only little touches, little combinations that really stand out for me. At this end of the garden though, there's something that I'll show you, some progress that's made, that I hinted at in my last video, which is this apple tree here. Now, when it comes to pruning apple trees, I know a bit, not enough though, to make a video about the subject, which I hope you'll appreciate, because there's too many people on YouTube these days happy to make a video about anything, pretending they're an expert. But for me at least, I've given it a good go. Now, the first thing when it comes to apple trees is basically remove the 3 Ds, dead, diseased, or damaged wood. You also shouldn't really remove more than 25% in a single year, otherwise you can lead to a tree which doesn't fruit very well for a few years afterwards and sends up lots of water shoots. Now, obviously, I've pushed the 25% a little bit this year, but in the past, I suspect this tree has been cut back very hard. And I'm not saying anything wrong has been done, but there was a lot of very jagged lines. There's a lot of bits, like up there, where the tree had pretty much started to go straight up and it looked completely wrong. So what I've done to the best of my ability is really try to open up the crown of the tree itself. There wasn't any dead, damaged, diseased wood really in there. For me, it was really about taking out the crossing branches, opening the tree up a little bit more. You generally want apple trees to be like an open vase shape, so there's plenty of air and sun getting to the fruit, so you end up with better fruit, spread out nicely in the tree. And I've really also tried to sort of crown lift it a little bit to make it a more enticing tree to work into a garden design. Whether that's a tree to have a little den for Harriet behind, have smaller trees around it. I wanted a little bit more openness there. And I think I've achieved the right kind of balance without taking too much off. So yes, there's a bit more work to be done further up, a lot of crossing branches, a lot of taking some of these little whippy water shoots off, but that can wait until next year. I've got the main work done. And to be honest, the only really scary decision was that branch right up there in the middle. I really need that leader there to head off in that direction because it was going basically straight into that one there. So hopefully, as you look around the tree, there is a little bit of balance. And if anything, I'd like to say I've not improved on the original character, but maybe corrected the way some of the initial pruning had grown out. Obviously, Paul really knows his stuff with apple trees, who used to look after this, but unfortunately, he's not been able to do much to it over the last few years. So I'd like to think I've done it justice this time. So yes, it looks like there's a huge pile of branches here, not that much in reality, and I can soon process it down. You can see behind it, I've got some of my sweepings, the clippings from the hedges. A garden like this generates a lot of green waste. I say waste, but in reality, I know a lot of you know, it'll really be used. But as we come to the back, I will discuss that subject and another one. Yes, you can see the hedge. Now, when it came to this mesh, yes, I put it properly all the way down the rest of the hedge there, nicely clipped in. But this section of the hedge here, it's not very good. So over the next month then, I'll be taking out some of the brambles that's in there. There might be a rose or two just hidden in there. And then basically just filling out this section of the hedge so it doesn't look a complete sparse mess. When it comes to the back edge though, although I've temporarily dog-proofed it using my wire mesh, I haven't fully fixed it. And that's because I'm in two minds. I mean, yes, it will be staying there, but I actually found out some news, again, speaking with Peter, running at the back of the garden here, the solicitors didn't say anything about this, there is a water course. Well, I say water course, water pipes. Up there is a spring, very clear water. I know it runs out further down into the village and it really is crystal clear. But through that garden and this one here, it's piped. It runs all the way through. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. I'm going to plant a lot of trees here, I need some water, and get that idea out of your mind. But what I do need to be aware of is not plant any big trees down this line here. One of my plans was actually to have a couple of big trees here to give a proper backdrop, but those, I'll move things around and plant those in this section here, no problem. So when it comes to this part of the garden, I'm restricted in terms of planting anything too big with an invasive root system. I don't want anything that, if I had to dig it up one day, it would be, you know, a proper heart-wrenching moment. Although what I am thinking now is planting a secondary hedge in front of this one. You see, look at this hedge here, and there is another garden behind us there. They've got big dogs. The hedge is quite open, really big trunks of some of these hawthorns. And although there's lots of fantastic growth, berries, flowers further up, there's no way of really saving this bottom part of the hedge without hacking the whole thing right back, laying the whole hedge, which is not something I'm prepared to do. It's not going to be safe for our dogs while it's done, and also they've got their own planting on the other side of it. So what I'm thinking is maybe, because we've got the room for it, is have a secondary lower hedge, maybe something like yew in front of it. Now yew, it ticks several boxes. It's a native, so you've got the berries, which I know they're toxic to pets and humans, which is an issue that I'll have to cross. They are fantastic for wildlife. They're also very good at growing in shade, or tolerant of shade, should I say, which will be helpful with all the big trees I've got planned for this area here. And the third thing is they're evergreen. Now, having a nice dark backdrop will really show off some of the ornamental trunks and berries, the stems, the vivid winter colour of plants I'm thinking of putting in front of it. So let me know your thoughts about that idea there. But I think personally, having a beautiful yew hedge down there, just something that can be kept not 100% pristine, but just roughly clipped, something up to around that height there, about 1200, 5 foot tall, something like that. I think that would work very nicely. That will be set right back up there. So if I did need to get into water pipe, you know, it's not impossible. I've not lost a huge specimen tree, but at the end of the day, it's more of a practical thing for me, a nice visual barrier, and it stops our dogs doing what Remi's doing now, which is looking into next door and trying to wind their dogs up. So let me know your thoughts about that. The areas in between then, I can then plant a lot of my evergreen exotics, a lot of things with berries for the birds. Now, when it comes to birds, this apple tree is an absolute hero. Like I mentioned in my last video, there's probably been best part of 50 blackbirds all swarming, flocking around this tree, eating the apples. Now they've fallen to the ground. I think the tree was only holding the apples to the end of December because it hasn't been cold. It's been so mild up to the cold spell, but it's only taken a couple of sub-zero nights and dropped straight away, and the birds have absolutely loved them. But you can see one of my next projects here. Yes, I've spoke about a compost heap. I talked about having it behind my future garden building. But what I will definitely be doing for the short term, and may even stick with it, is keeping this area here as a compost heap. I mean, it makes perfect sense. It's right at the back of the garden. It's easy to visually block in. I could simply put the return on it there, maybe even plant a few yews in front of it to tie it in nice and visually. It's out of the way. As much as I want the future greenhouse or polytunnel right at the centre of the garden, let's be honest, the compost heap doesn't do much for most of the year. It's not really a visual treat, so it can stay out of the way. I've already got this metal secured quite nicely behind it, but what I'm going to do, I'll just walk through here, scratch the lens quite nicely with that cherry tree, which I haven't pruned back because soft fruit, you don't prune them until the summer months, otherwise you can introduce disease. My plan is basically to use like the timber that I've kept from other projects and bits and pieces from around the garden to drag this out here and really go big with the composting. I know you can have one single heap like this, and that's great for getting rid of stuff. And don't get me wrong, there is a lot of just soil under here as well, I believe. But when it comes to creating compost, which is really my goal, compost, you can never make enough for a garden. So I want the most efficient way of doing that possible. And for me, doing that on a larger scale with all the hedge clippings and everything I'm going to produce, I know I need a shredder, but that's something for down the line, is to have a 3-bay system. I'm sure you've heard people more knowledgeable than me talk about this, but essentially one big bay at this side here where everything gets chucked in, a nice mixture of the brown waste, the greens, everything in there. And then once that's full, you turn it over into the second bay, which is where it really cooks. So that way, the turning aerates it, you're mixing everything up nicely, it stays there, and it breaks down quite nicely into what sort of looks like compost. And then a third bay at the end, which is the final sitting process. The compost taking up a smaller volume, it can just sit in that end box quite nicely until it's ready to be used as a mulch or, you know, straight mixed in with compost, that kind of thing. So that generally is my plan. I think that's a good space to use as a compost heap. It's already basically there. So what do I need to do? Well, firstly, take out everything that's there. Use a lot of the good compost that's under there already to actually cover and mulch this area here, and then build the compost bays and move a lot of this stuff back into the first bay. Another project to do, but an exciting one. And composting is something I'm really looking forward to getting into. There's a lot of interesting information out there, and I know I can use a lot of good compost, particularly with the blended planting I've got coming up. I did actually also find out about these posts. Apparently there were posts set down the hedge, but just as I suspected, they got a tractor to cut it and it smashed them to pieces. And in fact, some of these, I think, with a little bit of encouragement, yeah, they will come out. So those, again, will be reused in my projects throughout the garden. more free bits of timber. You got to look on the bright side, haven't you? So there we go. I don't know how I'll describe today's video. Some garden changes, some garden promises, future plans, a lot of things really in the distance, but definitely some more exciting projects in the very near future too. The moon now rising up over there, the air starting to feel colder. A cold snap is ahead of us, or behind us as you watch this. But I hope you enjoyed today's video. There's definitely a lot ahead, a lot of plans. This next few months is going to be incredibly busy, but I'm incredibly excited to get cracking with it. And honestly, seeing this part of the garden now, it suddenly made it feel so much more real. The fencing I did in my last episode, that prepared this garden for Remi to run around like a madman. Max is sat inside in the warmth. But this is where my playtime begins, and I've really been intrigued to know your thoughts. So thank you very much for watching as always. Please let me know your thoughts, your ideas, your inspiration. How would you lead this area here into the grass border? Do you think those mounds will tie the two gardens together? Some exciting planting up there. As always, I'd really love your comments in the section below. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you very soon. See you later.